In the NBA, young players should always get a grace period early on so they can acclimate themselves to this level of play and gradually get more comfortable against the talent of their competition, but that grace period won't last very long if potential and their flashes of brilliance are not on display occasionally in that time. Consistency will pretty much always be an issue with young players, and that's something that comes with time. But if a player is struggling to elevate their play at all after a couple of years, then it may be time to admit that they just won't be the player that many expected them to be when they were drafted. That's exactly what we'll be discussing in today's video, as we will be identifying 4 former lottery picks from the last couple draft classes that it is finally time to give up on ever reaching their full potential because they just have not shown enough on the court to justify that kind of belief. Before we start though, it turns out a good amount of you watching right now aren't even subscribed to the channel, so if you enjoy the content, consider hitting the subscribe button, as not only does it help out a ton, but it also very much appreciated. Now with that being said, let's begin. The first former top pick that it is officially time to give up on is James Wiseman of the Indiana Pacers. Wiseman's NBA career has been one of the most disappointing developmental stories of the last few years, as he entered the league in 2020 as the second overall pick that draft, ahead of a few all-star caliber guys, and has just not been able to prove that he can be trustworthy enough for consistent minutes in a rotation, let alone enough to be a quality starting center. Wiseman was a bit of a mystery when he was drafted because he only played a small handful of games in college before dropping out to prepare for the NBA draft on his own, and his physical tools were everything that NBA scouts drool over, so they still held him in high regard, thus why he was still selected second overall. Unfortunately, he's a telltale example of why physical tools and measurables aren't always enough to make a good basketball player, because Wiseman's basketball IQ has always been what has held him back. Defensively, he looks like he should be an elite rim protector with towering size and long arms to block shots with, but he struggles with positioning and timing on his rotations, and as a result, he's actually a pretty porous defender that gets beat on rotations rather often. Offensively, his athleticism has shined on several occasions, and he can definitely finish strong around the rim, but outside of that, he's not the best decision maker with the ball in his hands, and his shooting touch has never taken the leap forward that scouts hoped it would. After 2 years in Golden State and then 2 more years in Detroit, he now finds himself as an Indiana Pacer on a minimum prove-it contract where he will likely be the third center in the rotation and may not even see the court all that much unless injuries occur. So right now, his best case scenario is just becoming a backup center at all, and even that is not guaranteed anymore. The next former lottery pick that it's officially time to give up on is Johnny Davis of the Washington Wizards. Davis was drafted 10th overall just 2 years ago in the 2022 NBA draft, yet he already lands on this list because he has not been able to display a single redeeming quality on the basketball court yet, and like I said in the intro, you have to at least show some flashes of potential in order to earn the patience warranted with most young talent. The biggest telltale sign, to me at least, that Davis is not going to last much longer in the NBA is how mediocre he looked in the Summer League this year. He put up about 13 points per game in the 2 games that he played in this year's Summer League, and admittedly he was pretty efficient in those 2 games as well, but average production like that against that level of talent from a former top 10 pick who is going into their 3rd season in the NBA is simply not good enough. If you're still playing Summer League ball as a 3rd-year player, you need to look like one of the best players out on that court if you want to prove that you have the ability to break out, and Davis looked no different than half of the players who won't even be on NBA rosters this year. Since being drafted, he's spent a ton of time down in the G League, he's barely been able to get NBA minutes because he hasn't proven he can be trusted, and when he's been on the court, he's been really bad on both ends of the floor, averaging 4 points per game, shooting 39% from the field and 28% from 3 in his career. His jumper also looks more wonky and stiff than it did in college, so he also seems to be overthinking things and tinkering with stuff that didn't need to be tinkered with, because the whole reason he was a top 10 pick in the first place was because he was such a natural scoring talent, and that scoring ability has completely disappeared into thin air. The next former lottery pick that it's officially time to give up on is Ziaire Williams of the Brooklyn Nets. Williams was the 10th pick in the 2021 NBA draft by the Memphis Grizzlies originally, so we see back-to-back 10th overall selections busting in this video now. When Williams was drafted by the Grizzlies, he came to the team right as they were ready to emerge, having gone from a play-in team the year before to finishing as the 2 seed during Williams' rookie season. Unfortunately, circumstance and surroundings also play a big part in a young player's development, and the Grizzlies were just not on the kind of timeline to bring along a raw project of a pick like Williams was. It was clear that, as a prospect, Ziaire was not the kind of player ready to step right into an NBA lineup and make a positive impact, which made the pick pretty questionable at the time, and now 3 years later we're only scratching our heads even more about it. Sure, the fact that he struggled with injuries over the last couple of years has played a part in it, but when he's on the court, he has typically been one of the worst players on the floor, and a lot of his production comes from his over-reliance on his athleticism. He is a bouncy athlete that finishes high above the rim, but his three-point shot has been around the 30% mark in all 3 years of his career, which is well below average. His overall field goal percentage has regressed every single season. He struggles to create separation on the ball, and he's not a playmaker for others. I will say that the Nets trading for him this offseason is probably one of the best things that could have happened for his career, because he is now in a much lower pressure environment, but it also might be too little too late with how many other prospects the Nets have to try to develop as well. And finally, the last former lottery pick that it's officially time to give up on is Josh Primo, who currently isn't even on a roster. That's right, the biggest example of a swift fall off after being the 12th overall pick in the 2020 NBA draft is Josh Primo, whose entire career has gone downhill in this time. He came in as a teenager with a lot of growth needed, but off-the-court issues quickly made him a liability after just 1 season in San Antonio, as he was facing legal trouble for his actions he took against a Spurs staffer. Those charges may have been dropped, but his reputation is now permanently tarnished, and he's not talented enough to warrant taking a real swing on him even as a buy low option. Last season, the Clippers tried to give him a second chance by signing him to a 2-way deal where he played mostly in the G League for them and made just 2 appearances with the Clippers in the NBA, but they ended up waiving him before the end of the regular season to take a chance on another interesting character, Kai Jones. Since then, Josh Primo has been unsigned, and his next step as a basketball player may need to come overseas, despite still being just 21 years old. His case is a telltale sign of how your conduct off the court matters just as much as your conduct on the court, because otherwise he would easily be someone the teams would want to take a chance on. And with that being said, that's all I have for you today. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and comment down below what you think about these young players and their futures in the NBA. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time.